Did you know? The codename for the Nintendo 64 was Project Reality. On August 23, 1993, Nintendo announced a partnership with Silicon Graphics to create a 3D 64-bit Nintendo machine. It was to be unveiled in arcades in 1994 and be made available for home use by late 1995 for $250. Nintendo of America's then Vice President Howard Lincoln was quoted saying, "Our work with Silicon Graphics enables us to actually skip a generation by diving straight through to 64-bit 3D video entertainment." Despite Nintendo's claims of such a futuristic entertainment system, the company decided to continue using game cartridges instead of moving into CD-ROM technology, stating that a disc-based solution was too slow for the complex graphics that Project Reality would boast. An early tech video demonstrated Project Reality's trilinear mip-map interpolation and claimed that the rapid and infinite movement was only possible with a cartridge and couldn't be duplicated on any system using a CD-ROM. Though this was the reasoning from Nintendo as to why Project Reality would be using cartridges, industry speculation presented a few other explanations. One idea was that by foregoing a disk drive, Nintendo would reportedly lower Project Reality's price tag by around $100. On June 23, 1994, Nintendo gave an official name to Project Reality: Ultra 64. During a private demo for journalists, Nintendo revealed two Ultra 64 titles: Killer Instinct and Cruisin' USA. These games were reportedly running on Ultra 64 hardware and were supposed to look exactly the same at home as they did in arcades. Unfortunately, this wasn't true. Both games had actually been demoed using proprietary arcade hardware, and the Nintendo 64 would end up being weaker than initially planned. Cruisin' USA eventually found its way onto the Nintendo 64, but the graphics had to be downgraded for the home console version. Because of a delay in launching the system, the initial home console version of Killer Instinct wasn't even made for the Nintendo 64. Instead, a port of the game was developed for the Super Nintendo. Adding to this hardware confusion was the fact that some Nintendo 64 games were developed on SGI Onyx systems, which far exceeded the Nintendo 64's power. For over a year of GoldenEye 007's development, the dev team was simply estimating what the specs of Nintendo's future console might be and designing the game based on those estimations. As it turned out, the final hardware was actually able to render polygons faster than the SGI machines. However, the in-game textures had to be cut down by half. Super Mario 64 also started development on an SGI Onyx machine, but eventually migrated to an SGI Indie machine, which was much closer to the system's final specifications. Commenting on the pixel quality of the Nintendo 64 and its competitors, Super Mario 64 coder Giles Goddard stated that SGI was concerned more with the quality of pixels than the speed of the machine. The PlayStation, speed-wise, it was much faster, but the pixels were dreadful. That was what SGI aimed at from the outset: quality of pixels over speed. On November 24, 1995, the Nintendo 64 was finally unveiled at Shoshinkai, a video game trade show hosted by Nintendo. This was the first time the console's final name was revealed after Nintendo abandoned the name Ultra 64 due to Konami holding a trademark on the name Ultra Games. The release dates given at Shoshinkai were eventually pushed back, but in June and March of 1996, the Nintendo 64 was released in Japan and North America respectively, while European stores had to wait until March 1st, 1997 to stock the console. Throughout its lifetime, the Nintendo 64 was given a handful of accessories, some of which were widely used and others that barely saw the light of day. The expansion pack was a first-party accessory that increased the Nintendo 64's available RAM from 4 MB to 8 MB. This allowed developers to make games with higher resolution, longer draw distance, and more detailed textures. Though there were a handful of games that considered the expansion pack optional, only 3 games actually required it to run: Donkey Kong 64, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, and Perfect Dark. The expansion pack actually came bundled with Donkey Kong 64, as it was the only solution to fix a game-breaking bug that caused random crashing. The Nintendo 64 disk drive, also known as the 64DD, was a first-party add-on that read magneto-optical discs and was only released in Japan. The 64DD was announced during the unveiling of the Nintendo 64 at 1995 Shoshinkai event. Several games were announced or rumored for the device, including Banjo-Kazooie 2, Dobutsu no Mori, Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards, Super Mario RPG 2, and 12 Tales Conquer 64, all of which ended up being released on a standard Nintendo 64 cartridge. Some games that were announced for the 64DD were never released, or were instead made on different consoles, such as Far East of Eden Oriental Blue, Super Mario 64 2, and Final Fantasy VII. Only 9 games were officially licensed and released for the 64DD, including 2 Doshin the Giant games, SimCity 64, and 4 Mario Artist games. The Mario Artist games were all creative studios. Polygon Studio allowed users to design simple 3D images. It also featured a handful of microgames that utilized the player-made graphics. Some of these games would later be featured in the WarioWare series. Paint Studio was a program not unlike Mario Paint for the SNES. It allowed users to draw pictures and utilize Nintendo-themed stamps. The game was often bundled with a Nintendo 64 mouse, which made it similar to painting on a computer. Paint Studio was also compatible with the Nintendo 64 capture card, a device that allowed users to import still images from VCRs or other analog video sources, or even record movies on the 64DD. The capture card was also used in and bundled with the Talent Studio game, where you could record movies or import still images. Images imported into Talent Studio, such as a person's face, could be pasted onto 3D models and animated within the program. The final Mario Artist game for the 64DD was called the Communication Kit, which allowed users to share creations made in Paint Studio, Talent Studio, or Polygon Studio over RandNet, which was an online service specifically made for the 64DD. To connect to RandNet, users needed the Nintendo 64 modem, which was a special cartridge with a port for a modular cable, which could then connect to the network. From there, users could play against other gamers, watch other players' game sessions, play demos, surf the internet, and email other users. Though RandNet was reportedly popular with the limited 64DD user base, the service only ran from December 1999 to February 2001. In a kind gesture to its users, Nintendo bought back all the RandNet-related hardware and gave all users free service until the shutoff date, instead of charging them the regular 2,500 yen monthly fee. That's all for today, but don't forget to subscribe to Did You Know Gaming, and follow Did You Know Gaming on Facebook and Twitter. Make sure you also check out DidYouKnowGaming.com, and if you like this video, check out our other videos as well. Or if you're looking for something else to watch, you could check out my video on Oregon Trail 2 over on my channel, along with a variety of other gaming-themed videos.